Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode in Project C.A.R. So this time around we're going to have a quick look at what I've been doing so far, but the main focus will be on the wiring that I'm doing. Now if you remember in episode 25 it was, I think, which I've linked up here, I described my entire design process of it. Now this time we're going to have a quick look at how I've implemented that and the actual wiring running through the car, how I'm taking it through it step by step. I'm not going to go in depth yet on how to do the connectors themselves, how the crimping process works, but just briefly look at it. I'm going to do it in a future video in which I can really do it in depth and show you exactly how it works, because I'm still learning and I want to make sure that I explain to you the proper way of doing it instead of making a complete arse out of myself. So yeah, in this one we're going to have a detailed look at what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, how I'm doing it, the philosophy behind it, and then the next video will be the practical side of it. So hopefully you enjoy, let me know, and let's get going. So as you can see, it is getting a little bit crowded in here, or at least a lot more than it was when the car first arrived. So as you can see, the roll cage is put in place. That allows me to see where I've got space to run various wires and looms. You may remember that the door is missing. That has now almost been repaired again and ready to be delivered. I think I'm going to see if the guys are happy to store it for me, because I don't have a lot of storage space, plus it's a lot easier to get in and out of the car without the door in it. Other than that, you can see a lot of wires running absolutely everywhere. We're going to get to that in a second. But like I said, the seat is in, the driver's seat is in. That took about 3 days to do because I was all over the place with it. The passenger seat will be done next. Then the steering column is in, which needed a little bit of modifying to fit properly, and repairs because it was all fixed in position. The whole sliding mechanism didn't work, so I had to sort that out. The steering wheel is on, it has a nice cover on it now, so it's just everything is in place to make sure that's all lined up, and I know exactly how long the wires need to be and everything. Like I said, we'll get to that in a bit. Fuse box has been installed to where I want it. And I have been working on the dashboard, which is laying on top of the roof. As you can see, it's all looking very nice there. All the wires are hidden behind it, which will be the next step of actually sorting those out. But yeah, lots have been happening here. However, that's not the main theme of this episode. We are going to be looking at the custom wiring loom I'm doing. Like I said, I've explained the design phase of it in episode 25. This time around, we're going to be looking at how all these wires are going to come together, how I make the connectors. For the first one is already in, just as a trial. I wanted to make sure I knew how to do it before explaining it. And you can see there's a few others that have already been in place. So first of all, I'm going to show you how the connectors work. So as I mentioned, I'm using the Deutsch, in this case 29 pin HP30, I believe, HDP30 29 pin ones. That's these lot. So they just sit in together and then you twist them and they mate, and that's it. And these go through the bulkheads, hence the large nut. I'll show you in the boot in a minute, which I've already put in place. How does that work? These are what is called using a closed barrel pin, and I'll just get one out. I've got one spare by the looks of it. So as you can see, they are pretty small. This is a 16 gauge one. Your wire goes on in here, and then using a special tool, which I'll show you next, you crimp them, give them a little tug to make sure they're tight enough, and then you can push them in. So the tool I'm referring to is I'm using an official Deutsch tool. So this wheel here allows me to set the thickness of the wire so that it makes a proper crimp. This part here, adjusting wise, is to make sure that the pin goes in far enough, because they're all slightly different sizes depending on the gauge of the wire lengthwise. You want to make sure that the pin, once you push it in, let me just grab one quickly. So once you've adjusted it, put the pin in, and then as you can push it slightly, which once it's fully pushed, you want to make sure it's level with its surrounding area. And then as you push the wire in, push it all the way in, and then you pull the handles together. Now, as you can hear, it's a ratchet type, and it won't open up again until you've gone all the way. So that way you know you've got a proper crimp. And then at the end you want to make sure that the crimp sits between the end and the little inspection hole you can kind of just see there. Like I said, I'll do a proper explanation of how it works in the next episode, where I'll do a few of them. But at the moment I'm just doing trials to make sure I know exactly how to do it and make sure it's all good before showing it to you and not make a complete ass of myself. For the wiring, you want to make sure you've got a good stripper. So I've just found one on eBay that was recommended. It's actually a set. It also comes with the crimping tool, which I use. I don't know where it is at the moment, but I use that for splices and open barrel crimps. So these are called closed barrel crimps, and then open barrel I use the other tool for. Once you have them on the wire itself, you can then push the pins in, and I'll show you on the connector how that works. So I think the next step will be to head into the car and look at the loom itself. So we are in the boot of the car at the moment. As you can see, I'm already running my first wiring loom. Back here is the connector. Like I said, just with a twisting motion I can undo that, put it back in. I've used a heat shrink, what do you call it, pre-shaped boot around this one, just to seal it off completely, and then inside the car is a removable one, which I'll show you, and then I can show you how the pins actually work. That then runs, so I was told by the engineer, by my electrical specialists at work, to make sure I've got sufficient wire left in case of any future repairs. So there's a nice about 3-4 inches or 10 centimeters additional length, and then this will all be fixed in place once I'm happy to where it goes. Now I'm using a combination of expandable braided sleeves that, as you push one end, it then expands. You can slide it over whichever wiring loom you're doing. Just see if I can get it on the camera. If I do that, oh sorry guys, you can see it kind of expands, so that way it makes it easier. Now, one thing to keep in mind is as it expands, it reduces in length. So I initially had this cut to perfect length, and then as I got it around, because the wiring loom was thicker than the nominal dimension of the sleeve, it ended up expanding, therefore contracting, and now I'm short, I'd say about almost 6-7 centimeters, or about 3 inches. So yeah, I need to redo this one because I'm not happy with it. The other option is I wrap around tape, but I don't think that looks very nice, so we're going to redo that one. Back here in this junction, you've got all the ground wires coming out, and various wires for my for the battery, the kill switch, chargers, and a fire extinguisher system, which will sit on the other side, which will be a whole different subject another time. Once the braided sleeving is on, I use heat shrink to seal everything in, aside from this one, because like I said, it's too short. But all the other ones, you can see they are nicely seated properly. And that also gives it a nice rigid joint that doesn't rip the wires or anything else. And then they just go off to wherever they need to go. So that then continues. We've got the 12-volt USB point here, or probably just a typical cigar lighter point I'm using in the boot. We've got the lights, it then continues, and then this is where I am at the moment. Every junction, to give it extra strength, I'm using what is called Kaptalon tape, which is this orange see-through tape. I wrap that around it really tight just to keep the wires together. So another way of reducing stress on the heat shrink that goes around it, and it stops it from ripping. This is my first splice that I did. Again, I'll show you that in a practical video in a future episode when I get to do more of it. But yeah, that was very straightforward. My wire was too short, but thankfully I needed to run an additional wire back to the bootlet, so I managed to get a splice in here, so that then goes to the outside for my number plate lights, and then the rest goes to the boot. You're probably wondering what do you mean with the boot. It's actually this lot here. On the boot lid itself on the inside, I'm going to have two, they'll probably be about somewhere here, two rear lights, just in case I'm standing to the side of the road, the boot is open, I'm standing in front of one of the lights, you can still see them. It also have a work light, probably somewhere mounted here just to give extra light at night. And that is pretty much it in the boot section here. So we'll pop into the car itself and have a look at what I'm doing there. So this is the other side of the connector, and as I said, this one has got a removable boot. So if I just pull that off, you can see how it looks on the actual inside. So first of all, what I've done, I've used heat shrinkable labels. Every wire has been labeled, and that's then transferred onto a sheet, which I have here. I'm going to type that out and then include it in my my book once it's finished, so I know exactly which pin is which wire. Like I said, this boot is removable, so that just sits around it just to protect everything, keep it nice and clean. I almost need two hands to get that on. I'll do that in a bit. But yeah, the wires then run through the entire car. In the boot section, that's why I started there. It was pretty straightforward because it all runs to one point. However, running from there to the front of the car, which is over here, you can now see that things become, I just pull that aside, things become slightly more complicated, because obviously I have wires that need to go to my center console. I have wires that need to go to my switch panel, which will be here. I've got wires that go to the fuse box, they go to the front of the car, which will disappear somewhere back there. Then there's a lot that needs to go to the steering column for the indicators, the wipers and everything else, the ignition switch. And obviously we've got a few by the pedals for the brake lights, clutch neutral switch, and so on. So yeah, it's a bit of a chaos at the moment. However, I'm just doing wire by wire, one by one, and then it should be pretty straightforward from there. It really helps if you have a proper diagram drawn up of your system, and then just do one wire after the other, and make sure you label everything. Don't be like me. Don't be like me and label them at one end and the other end, and then you decide to cut them halfway, which I did here, and then you're like, oh shoot, now what? So I then had to use my voltmeter to run every single wire in order to double check which one was what. So yeah, make sure you label everything and label them again where you're going to cut them. That's it pretty much on the wiring that I'm doing. Like I said, I want to give a more in-depth practical video in the next episode on how to actually do all the crimping and whatnot, but I just wanted to show you what I'm doing and how I'm doing it and the philosophy behind things. So I'm going to continue cracking on with this now, and hopefully I'll have a new video for you shortly. So thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. Don't forget to subscribe before you go, and give me your comments, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.